Stoten from My Home to Yours. Welcome to EMS at Sea Level. I'm joined by Dan from Nexar. Dan, before we get started on the question and dig into your friend EDDI, the Electronic Design and Delivery Index, let me get a quick introduction of yourself and the Nexar organization.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me, Philip. Really appreciate it. So I have about a 20-year history in the electronics space in general. I've spent the last 5 years working for Altium, and you mentioned the name Nexar. That is the business unit that I'm a part of. And Altium is really a company that's focused on electronic design, with our flagship product being Altium Designer, which is printed circuit board design CAD software. Prior to that time, I spent about 7 years at Aero Electronics in their digital strategy group, and helped them really, I think, mature digitally and go to market digitally in ways that Aero had not prior to then. And before that, I spent time at formerly Flextronics when I was there. And I was in a global supply chain role and was responsible for customers like Juniper Networks and Hewlett Packard at that time. So I like to say I've seen the industry from a few different perspectives, and it kind of drives the direction that we're taking our products at the company I'm at today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that background's really interesting. And when you look back to those days where you were at Flex and Flextronics working in supply chain, you probably went to a dinner party and said you were in supply chain, and people said, "What's that?"
It's
now you
funny
go to
you
the
mentioned
same
that.
dinner party, and they're asking what the hell's going on in the supply
I
chain.
think my career in supply chain goes back far enough that it predates even the terminology supply chain. I think it was called purchasing when I first joined my first organization that was focused on supply chain. But I think that the evolution of supply chain over the last 2.5, 3 decades has been something to behold. It's become just a strategic element to every organization that takes themselves seriously, and it's a great way to manage your operation and to really get strategic about how you approach supply chain.
Yeah, and it's absolutely a value add for those companies that are involved in facilitating the supply chains of the major brands. And when you look at the contract manufacturer that you mentioned, but all their competitors, it's absolutely a key part of their business. So that kind of brings us on to the report you're producing called EDDI. Tell me a bit about the Nexar group and a little bit about the monthly report that comes out.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity here to talk to the audience about this. So Altium in general really sits at an interesting intersection of the electronic space. I mentioned the parent company in our flagship product being printed circuit board software, and obviously there's a very unique and highly concentrated audience of designers and engineers that use that tool. And another part of our business, this Nexar business unit, we have businesses like Octopart, which is a search engine for electronic components. We have, as a piece of that, is also our cloud product called Altium 365, which is intended to bring together what we view as disparate domains and audiences, those being the domains of design, of supply chain, and manufacturing, and trying to bring those into one space. And so when I say we sit at an interesting intersection of the industry, we have millions of users every month that are interacting on our platforms with part information, and those users span everything from, again, those designers and front-end engineers to everything like procurement professionals and supply chain professionals. And everything in between, with industry insiders being a part of that as well. And so those interactions that we have on our website, the searches, the data sheet downloads, the the bills of materials that get uploaded into our platforms, those all are signs of intent from a variety of stakeholders in the industry. And those signs of intent we're pulling together to form unique insights that we can then take back to the industry to provide trend line information, time series information about the availability of componentry and the interest that there is in componentry as well too. And that's where the idea for, you've mentioned it a couple times now, the EDDI, which stands for our Electronic Design to Delivery Index. That's where the idea and concept behind that spawned out of this desire to use some of this intelligence that we get and bring it back to our audiences.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's great. It's great data. It's great insight. We've never been more, I guess, concerned about what's going on in the supply chain, but also starved of information. So someone who has that data at their fingertips, it absolutely makes sense to convert that into a report and deliver it back. How difficult was it to kind of formulate the report and to actually scrub the data and to make it actually make sense rather than just be, a huge pool of just numbers?
Sure. It's I think the short answer, it's just very hard. And part of what it takes is we've been at collecting information on the electronic space. That's the inventory that's available in the market. That's how it's priced. That's what is being searched for and what is being designed in new products. This data goes back more than 10 years. What becomes challenging is how do you take all these disparate data sets and bring them together and normalize them into one? And I think that anybody that's worked with data problems in this industry understands that the part number nomenclatures, the naming conventions for suppliers, challenges like that are ones that we do extremely well. We attack those extremely well, and that's part of the value of some of the analytics coming out of our Nexar business unit, and specifically that this EDDI, or we affectionately refer to it as the EDDI internally, but it's really it's years of information that's completely normalized into a couple of different signals to give industry stakeholders of all kinds a sense for what trends they can expect to see over in the coming months.
Yeah, and for that to be used as insight and to inform their decisions, so they can make the right choices. They're not saddling themselves with a choice that is going to cause them problems in the future. So that's hugely valuable. When we look at the subscribers, and I know you've already passed the 1,000 subscriber number. Congratulations on that, and I'm sure that's going to grow and grow. Who are the stakeholders? Who are the typical users of the data?
So this has proven to be very popular amongst OEMs of all sorts, and also contract manufacturing. We have a number of stakeholders that are in the selling arm of electronic componentry, so both distribution and direct selling, and then also on the design side as well too. So these are data sets that are proving to be valuable in a variety of workflows throughout the industry. I couldn't be more happy with the distribution that we're seeing of adoption at this point in time. And I think there are probably some use cases out there that we didn't think of when we were developing this product that it's now being used for.
Yeah, and when you talk about use cases, it's interesting. You were at the show in Vegas last week, talking to all kinds of different stakeholders. I guess talking to some subscribers. I'm sure people had some ideas on what you could add to the report and different ways they would be using the report. What kind of feedback were you getting?
The feedback that we got was overwhelmingly positive. I think that you kind of pointed to this earlier in the conversation, which is there's this interesting paradox that we're in right now, which is we've never had more information from which to make decisions, but we still find ourselves in the worst supply chain crisis that we've ever experienced. So clearly, the tools that are at our disposal right now are not solving our problems. And so there needs to be an evolution of those. And we think what we're doing is kind of really at the heart of that, at the spirit of doing that. But some of the feedback specifically that we got is we have inside of the report in both the demand signal that's there and the supply signal that's there. The report that we publish on a monthly basis has 9 high-level categories that break down into about 20 subcategories. And what we found is there's interest to go deeper. And there are many businesses that don't want to only see connectors as a high-level category. They want to understand the connectors that are important to their business, be it RF connectors or circular connectors or any variety of connector. They want to see this information in greater detail and broken down. And the good news is this, is that we have about 300 subcategories under what we're already publishing. So that data is available, and we're already beginning to work with partners on how to deliver that to satisfy their requirements.
Okay. And what about the insight from a point of view of, say, I'm a component distributor and I'm kind of trying to gauge what's going to be coming down the track, what my expectations should be, what people are designing in. Is that data I can use in that scenario as well?
Absolutely. One thing that I've learned about being in this industry for the duration that I have is, if there's anything we're pretty bad at, it's soft landings. I think there's a number of people in this industry, regardless of where they sit, whether it's in EMS or whether it's in the distribution of components, are worried about what does the fallout look like on the tail end of this. I'm sure that everybody's looking forward to the easing of some of the supply chain constraints that we've seen, but they're also concerned about what does the next phase of this look like? Is the pendulum going to swing too far in the other direction and cause problems in other sectors of the electronic component space? So I think what the EDDI report does is it provides this real-time look at what are the supply trends and what are the demand trends. And when we look at those demand trends, it's really looking at how difficult is it to source products right now. What sort of competition are individual companies going to come up against when they're trying to source these components right now? And what does the intensity of that search activity look like? And to me, search is the leading edge indicator of part demand. It is something that we can rely on to be in some ways predictive of what we can expect next. So for us, we feel like we're really unearthing something that is critical to future decision making and is I think the free state of the predictive analytics that we're developing in our business unit.
Yeah, and you said earlier that people were saying, okay, well, within that category, we'd like more categories, and even within those categories, we'd like more categories. Is there the option of getting something that's quite customized? In simple terms, if I'm a product company and I'm just working in the IoT space, for example, I just want to see what's going on with the IoT devices and those chipsets and those particular interface devices or those particular connectors. Is there the possibility to say, hey, just tell me what's going on with my bill of materials?
Yeah, so a couple of things that I want to highlight here that I think are important is the EDDI report we've been talking about is free. There's no cost. You can subscribe to it at our website, and it'll come to you on a monthly basis. There is more granular detail, as we talked about, that has the same signals that we've been referring to in demand and supply. And that is certainly something that we will work with individual entities on bespoke reporting that's specific to their category requirements and what they'd like to see. But I think the beauty in a lot of what we do is we understand this at a much more granular level as well too. We understand this down to the part number level, so that if there are individual entities that want to understand their specific bill of material, not the categories in which they operate in, but their specific part numbers that are of concern to them, that is something as well that we get into, and that gets into a suite of products that we call supply chain resilience tools. But absolutely, we like to, the EDDI is the highest level of reporting that we do, and we can get significantly more granular.
Yeah, and when you say when you say that data is available and those demand signals are available, are they available to those people that want more detail in a regular report, or are they available in more of a, more of a dynamic real-time indicator?
Yeah, so both are true. So we do have it
Fantastic.
In kind of this ability to be consumed on a monthly cadence, where at the end of the month we roll everything up and we present that several days after the month ends. Or this is also something where it can be a real-time analysis, where businesses that need to understand the specific risks they may be incurring today, they can go and evaluate their individual bill of material today as well too. So I think there's a lot of flexibility here that can find its way into a variety of workflows in the industry, depending on how an individual company wants to leverage this data.
Yeah, no, I absolutely see that. I see the value for a report when you've got meetings and you want to see what that trend line is, but I also see huge value in the kind of notifications and alerts you might need when something's happening that's going to indicate an impact on you. And if that happens on day 31 in a 30-day cycle, you're not going to hear about it for the next 29 days. You want a heads up as soon as you can get it. Dan, I'm going to ask you one more question. I almost feel bad for asking. You're not just a data guy, you're a supply chain guy.
Yeah.
You've been looking at all this data. Has it surprised you how bad it is? And what's your view on how long this is going to go?
I'm forever the optimist, Philip. So, but I have to say right now, like I think being in the business of predicting what's going to happen next year is not an envious position to be in. It's extremely challenging. I think every time we get close to, as an industry wide, if we get close to rebounding and starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, we've had relapses with regions that have been challenged with COVID. And we've had issues with raw materials, transportation's been impacted. So it's not as simple as some of the supply chain disruptions we've seen in the past around raw materials, where again, the opening of mines or the resupply of raw materials eases that burden. The feedback that I'm hearing from our partner network is that they expect the current conditions to be pretty much what they are through the end of this calendar year. And I tend to agree with that from what we're seeing right now. We're seeing some pretty intense sourcing activity that's happening inside of semiconductor products of all kinds still. And we're seeing extremely scarce inventory levels. And I think that's going to continue to drive a lot of the it's going to drive a lot of the inability for companies to mitigate their risk and to recognize the revenue in a predictable fashion. So I think we can look forward to current conditions for probably another 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, and ongoing challenging times. I definitely advocate the idea of designing for disruption. It's like every time we feel like we get to the end of one disruption, another wave hits us before we've even caught our breath. So I'm kind of wondering if companies are starting to rethink, and I know people are talking to their supply chain partners about new operational modes and kind of glass pipelines, so they've got a bit more visibility. So I think that's important. It's great if we can learn from some of these disruptions. The bottom line is, if you're going to learn, you need a lot of data to do that. And you guys are doing a great job providing that. So thank you so much for doing that. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate talking to you, and all the best going forward. We'll keep talking.
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it.